Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are joining us in the world. Welcome to the second I don't know if we can call it annual or weekly. I don't know what we're doing, but it's, I think, a bi-weekly fireside chat on the Market Brew side. We're super glad to have you. Today, we're discussing an incredibly important topic in the SEO world. And if I could poke the bear for a moment, it's also a pretty controversial one. So the question is this: can you actually forecast SEO? I would say for most of us, forecasting is just maybe a roll of the dice, like the craps table in Vegas, right? Or you're the weatherman, you're trying to help figure out, do I tell my viewers that they need a raincoat before they go to work or not? Or maybe you're a sales director and you're speaking to leadership about the type of focus we need to have on our pipeline in the quarter. But I think a lot of us see forecasting as just maybe a hopeful guess, possibly at best even wishful thinking. Well, today we're going to debunk that when it comes to the SEO world, because what if we could tell you that through search engine modeling, you can actually accurately forecast results in a world that continually says you can't? And what if that could change your company? What if that could change your agencies? And what if that could change the future revenue of what you're after? If that's what you're here for, buckle up. If you click the wrong link, you're locked in. Here we go. Let's do some introductions. So my name is, we're going to start off with Scott. We should start off with Scott because Scott is the brains behind our operation. So Scott Stouffer, he is the CTO and co-founder of Market Brew, an incredibly intelligent person and friend. Went to Carnegie Mellon, wrote 2 Google patents on transparency to make sure that the Google black box can be opened wide. An incredible human being, and just glad that you're with us today, Scott. So thanks for joining the
Glad to
viewers
join
from
everybody.
across the internet land. We did it. And
Yeah,
then let's
welcome
talk about
everybody.
me. We'll talk about me just for a quick second because we're not here for me. But I'm Steve. I had a pastoral ministry background for quite a long time, been in sales since 2016. Won a couple of awards with Verizon and Marquis Who's Who, but ultimately I love snobby coffee and I have a great mustache, and that's where I know how to stay in my lane. But let's talk through Market Brew. So this is a sponsored podcast from Market Brew, and Market Brew truly is this predictive search engine model that's proprietary. Every other model that you're going to see out there is a glorified Google scraper. What we do is actually allow our results to go after a search engine, model it, do A/B testing on the fly, shift our strategy should Google change its strategies. And you all know that Google loves to change their strategies. And that's why we're here. So the hope is, as we discuss SEO forecasting, maybe your interest might be piqued in Market Brew, and we may be able to have a further conversation. So let's hit the agenda for all of our guests joining us today. Scott, traditional SEO tools. You've been in this space for quite a long time, and the landscape of SEO continues to change. Google keeps moving the goalpost. Its ranking algorithms always affects our ranking algorithms, and the feeling that most SEO professionals have is uncertainty. Like, how does this algorithm will actually affect the work that I do and the revenue work that we do? So can you fill our viewers in on, like, maybe what a solution looks like for why traditional SEO tools fall short?
Yeah, I think the main point is that at least in 2024 and probably moving into the next few years is the volatility of Google and how that's translating to how accurate your tools are. We've seen this over and over. I've been in the game for a long time writing SEO software. And one of the things that plagues a lot of sort of rules-based SEO software tools is that every time Google zigs and zags, you're left with a tool that's not quite as accurate as it was before. And this is a big problem, obviously. CMOs and CEOs, they're really wanting a clear data-backed prediction of what will happen. When we talk about getting budgets and deciding on which tools to use for their teams, a lot of this just comes down to they want to be able to point to some data, some model, so that they can understand what the predicted ROI is, or what's the value that we're pouring into, what are we getting back. So that's the major thing. It's really just a matter of everybody that's just kind of looking outside of Google's black box and scraping Google. They're either using Ahrefs or SEMrush or a version of that to be as an input to their tool. All of those tools are effectively reacting to what's happening inside of this black box of Google. So the goal really is to find a way to get into this black box and get a little bit closer to the first principles of a search engine, whatever algorithm that might be. A common one that we're dealing with today is text-based classifiers, right? We've had a whole, history of classifiers. We've talked about this on previous Fireside Chats, where we've gone from, TF-IDF to keyword-based to entity-based and now on to embeddings. And all of these 4 text classifiers are used to some extent by the search engineers at Google, right? All of this is driven by a quality rater guidelines, which they are effectively label what they want the results to look like. And then they figure out what measure of all these base classifiers will be used to produce those results. So one of the things that you get inherently from going down to the first principles level is seeing that arc, that legacy arc that you can see, and it's also one of the reasons why a search engine modeling approach, which we'll discuss here in a second, is a little bit more agnostic to change, right? So it doesn't, if it's always calibrating itself to whatever those flavors of algorithms are, it doesn't really matter how much Google pivots. It's just going to simply pivot with that. So that's the goal. What we're trying to do, we're trying to have a data-based perspective as opposed to here's a checklist of things to do, which is, I'm speaking on the behalf of most of our competitors out there, honestly. Here's a checklist of things to do, and here you should go and do them. And the problem with that is that, if the CEO or CMO comes to you and says, now that you've done these things, what do we expect to happen? You really can't answer honestly. It's just a matter of, well, we hope it's positive, but it's really not something that they can come back and say, well, this is the expected value that we're going to get out of this, or this is what our models are showing us here. So that's really encapsulating sort of the major problem in the market today.
Yeah, that's really, really fair, Scott. Thanks for bringing that up. I will say to our viewers out there that if you have questions, I neglected to mention this earlier, feel free to throw them in the chat. We're going to have maybe some Q&R as we go throughout. There may be a longer portion of Q&R at the end where we can talk through your questions. So don't be hesitant. Feel free to jump in. And we just may even answer some questions live as we're on the call. So, Scott, understanding the zigging and the zagging that we have to do with Google, it is helpful to understand that forecasting is a doable thing. However, knowing how that actually functions, I think, is an incredibly challenging thing. So when you talk about, how calibrated models work, give our viewers a better understanding of where we've been and where we're going and why Market Brew can really fit that niche.
Sure. Yeah. So it's really just simple as having a model of something, right? All of the tasks that you're about to do or optimizations that you're about to do should be based off of some sort of model that when you change something on the tasks or implement one of these tasks, the model should change, right? You should see a end-to-end reflection of what you're doing and how much leverage that has on the current model. So that's one of the major things. The discussion really starts with the idea of search engine modeling, right? Back in 2006, we had this idea at Market Brew that we should trust SEOs instead of view them as like someone who is always trying to hack Google. And this is obviously a lot of legacy stuff where Google's algorithms used to be very easy to hack. But at this point, the algorithms are very complex and very hard to understand. And the idea of having a transparent search engine, which if you go to marketbrew.ai, you scroll to the bottom, you'll see those patent numbers. Those are these seminal patents in the SEO space that really describe the idea of a transparent search engine. And when we have that, this is sort of something that we built along the years in parallel with Google. We had this major discovery in 2014 in Palo Alto, California. We had a lot of smart people next to us. We were asking around, how can we build this model so that it adapts to when Google is adapting? Obviously, this new machine learning based Google has a sort of a different recipe of algorithms for each search intent. And we stumbled upon a genetic algorithm called particle swarm optimization. And what this allowed us to do was take all of these weightings on all of our algorithms in our search engine model and put placeholders on them. And then we would just point to whatever search results that we wanted to calibrate the model to, and it would find what are the settings and weightings on each of the modeled algorithms in our system so that our search results looked exactly the same. So effectively creating sort of a chameleon search engine, if you want to think of it about, there's a lot of different ways that you can view this: a Google simulator, a chameleon search engine. It's a search engine that always characterizes what Google's biases are, both which algorithms are most important, and also, how it's treating all of the landing pages in that search result for any SERP, right? So you can just see exactly what Google is biasing, almost as if you could look behind the shoulder of a Google search engineer and see sort of the tweaking that they're doing to get those results. So that's the idea behind these calibrated models. Search engines, they can kind of feel random, the search results. And especially today, as the volatility has kind of shaken a lot of the industry, as they've introduced new types of embedding algorithms, it leaves teams unsure about their next steps. And so, obviously I too have moments where it seemed like we were flying blind when making SEO changes in the past. And these models really provide a snapshot of current search engine behavior, and it really allows you to see how these biases will evolve, right? So you can not only see at any given moment a snapshot of what that model is doing and how it's behaving, but you can recalibrate these models and obviously start plotting a trend line, right? So now we can start to understand not just like what Google biases right now, but what is the trend? Which families of algorithms is Google trending more and more important or less and less important? So that's what we talk about when we're able to start to forecast on a macro scale, where we can see what is Google going to do around the corner. So it's really cool.
That is really exciting. So if we talk about actually predicting, though, I think the goal of SEO in some ways is to justify revenue, right? Like you have to figure out the tools that we use are actually going to help the company make money in the digital space. So with the future of predicting search engines like ours, how does a justifying budget conversation make sense? Like, what does it look like for an SEO director to be able to have that conversation and say, hey, I want to make sure that what I do is actually helpful to the business and actually can bring some real revenue to what we're trying to do? Is that a fair way to phrase the question, Scott? Is
Yeah.
there Okay.
Yeah, I think I always approach it from an opportunity cost perspective, right?
Hmm.
And these are the tools. Like, this is an example of a tool here in Market Brew. When you set one of these search engine models up, we call them ranking blueprints. So these ranking blueprints are essentially a snapshot. They're a control group that you have a sort of a moment in time. This is how Google is operating for this specific search result. And one of the cool things that you can do is, off of this calibrated model, we can generate a task list that's prioritized by the leverage that it has on the model. So every task is assigned a value that tells us, one, how important is this specific algorithm in the overall ranking results? Is it correlated or not? If it's not, then this is zeroed out of the model and you'd never see this task. And then the second thing is, how much leverage do we have? Given where we are in the search results for that search, do we have a chance to move up, and how much of a chance is there? Are we already ranking really well for this specific algorithm, or is this something that we have a lot of ground to make up? And so because we have these tools that we can sort of simulate what happens if you do or don't do these tasks, we have this really amazing opportunity cost calculator. You're seeing this in front of you right here, which allows us to take all of the tasks that get generated. And of course, I'm talking on single ranking blueprints, but in reality, what we do, as you know, Steve, is we build multiple ranking blueprints. We put them together in teams, usually that all represent a specific template on the site. And then we can start to see patterns emerge, right? So we can start to see certain algorithms appear over and over again. That's how we know these are scalable issues, not just one specific keyword page combination that we can actually apply to an entire template or the entire site, or maybe even to other assets that we own, right? So it's guidance on a higher level. And so this tool right here is really cool. I don't know if you've played with it yet, but it allows you to slide these sliders from 0 to 100%, and it will move the actual model in real time. So you can see the ranking results. I'll show you an example of this in a second here, where we can kind of dive into the live demo, and we'll take you through this. But it allows us to zero out certain tasks. Let's say another team says that they want budget because they think that they're going to have a specific ROI for their task, maybe the PPC side or some other part of the organization. And the SEO team is left with, well, okay, there's nothing we can do, right? We can't really put a value on that one task. All we know is it's important, right? It's important. And this is the problem in SEO, is there's no attribution. So the cool thing about having a calibrated model is it allows you to have these tools here where you can change and play what if, right? What if we don't do this task? What does that do? And you can see clearly, like here's an example right here where this client had three different, well, there's a bunch here. It was showing 3 tasks at the top. And the model is showing a path to the number 1 position, right? So it's saying you're currently in the 74th position. And if you implement these specific tasks, we've simulated that on the model and it will get you to the number 1 position. However, if we decide to all of a sudden say, hey, somebody else in our team said that we can't do those tasks, and the first 3 tasks we can't do, well, now we can see clearly that the highest we could get is 38th, right? The 38th position. So this is an amazing tool that allows you to attribute the opportunity cost of not doing a particular optimization. And now the SEO team can go back to the budget table and say, look, you're going to get this ROI if you give it to this other team, but the lost here, the ROI here is estimated to be this. And so now this is something that the CFO can understand, the CEO can understand. It's all metric based.
So that to me is really fascinating for a couple of things. One, I was in the music world for quite a long time, and I understand how faders work. So if I was behind a soundboard and I wanted to mute the kick drum because it was just so loud, all I had to do was just bring that fader down and essentially or hit the mute button. So Scott, what you're presenting is very much so like that soundboard dynamic. If I want to have a perfect EQ, to use the language of music, I need to make sure that fader number 1 is at 15 decibels. I need to make sure that fader number 2 is at -7 decibels because of the type of music that we're playing. So that tool itself is the most exciting to me, because if everything is important, Scott, then nothing is important. So if you
Yeah.
go to your leadership as an SEO director and say, hey, everything that I do is important, but the PPC guy does the same thing and has metrics behind it, all of a sudden you're at a loss for getting budget. But
That's
now you're
correct.
actually able to say, hey, if we like, I can actually predict where we're going. So if I was in 74th and now I'm up to 24th and I can do that in 3 months, imagine where we can go moving even forward from there. So Scott, I'm geeking out on that just because I love that idea of how do we truly predict and see something model in real time. Like that's a really beautiful tool you've created, man.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the whole idea was essentially opening up the search engine, giving the power back to SEOs. There are so many brilliant SEOs out there. I mean, literally, it's one of the most creative and analytical professions there is today. And very much so, these teams are all very big pivoters, right? They're cutting edge, so things change all the time. So they're able to be very nimble, and as long as they're presented with the data they need, they can be a rock star, right? The problem is Google sort of cuts them off at the knee because they're not able to have that discussion at the budget table. And that's really what we're trying to do, at least on the budgeting side for these search engine models. It's really helped us grow the SEO teams because they can justify everything.
For sure. Well, again, so if SEO teams are struggling to get that same type of budget, it's hard to predict. It's very relatable. If you don't have data, it's very hard to make decisions. I always ask people in my job, I know that time doesn't help people make a decision, information does. So, what type of information do people need to actually make a decision? And if you're in that role and you cannot give information, gosh, it's so much harder for the uppers to say, hey, yeah, I can't justify giving you money when, number 2 and number 3 marketer on the team doing a different aspect can actually show that return on investment. So I think that's cool because Market Brew really does provide that clear data-driven approach. So you can justify your SEO spends and possibly even ask and increase it for more. Scott, before you go into this little ranking blueprint section, we've got Corey who had a couple of questions. I'm just going to pop this one on the screen real quick and maybe we can answer some on the fly. So Corey, thanks for writing in. He said, can we incorporate either Ahrefs or SEMrush or your own version of traffic value and attach it to this tool? So is there some form of maybe API integration or something with Market Brew, or is it something that stands on its own?
Yeah, so Market Brew uses multiple rank trackers actually. So you can imagine like part of the process of setting up these models is to look at the rankings. So we use currently a number of leading rank trackers, and that pulls in that data so that we can implement whatever model that we want to. If there isn't a rank tracker that's available, or maybe that our baseline rank tracker is not picking up data for a specific search engine target search engine environment, then you can actually put a custom search result. So you can design your own search results, almost as if you were a quality rater guideline participant, and design the search results as you would want. In this case, it would just be, basically copying and pasting whatever source of data that you have into this calibration wizard, and it will attempt to calibrate a search engine that will output results like that. So it's literally like a chameleon search engine that you can direct using your own data.
Okay, so the next Corey's coming back. He's playing devil's advocate. You ready for number two, Scott, from Corey? Here it
Oh,
is.
yeah.
How do I demonstrate that it's an actual forecast versus just an assertion? Corey, this is the heart of what we're talking about today.
Yeah, I think probably pictures are better than words right now. So let me take you into the ranking blueprint just to show you how this all works. So Corey, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is the precision of our model, right? We have a whole QA system that sits there and measures how accurate these models are. For instance, this is a term called the particle swarm optimization score. And for every ranking blueprint, the system is constantly monitoring the results of Market Brew search results versus the target search engine, whether that be Google or any version of Google or any other search engine, or even the custom results that you put in. And so this is an example of a ranking blueprint that was calibrated on September 30th on the Google US. It was for the term homecoming dresses. And we can see the target page here that they had. And so we can see one of the things that you'll notice with this is first, we see the recipe of algorithms, right? So this is essentially that slider that you referenced, Steve, a little bit about the mixing board, right? So if you can imagine a mixing board, and for every slider on there is really representing one specific algorithm in our search results, in our search engine. And so we can either use 100% of our internal settings, of our relative settings between each individual algorithm, or we can zero it out. So we sort of start with our best guess, and then we let this particle swarm optimization sort of dial in exactly what those relationships are. And then once we see that, we can understand which algorithms are actually affecting the overall results and which ones are not. So that's the first step of generating these tasks and the modeling, the forecasting. The second one is how each algorithm was scored for that target page. And of course, we do this for every other landing page in the SERP. So you can sort of see, in certain areas, this target page is doing very well. Other areas, it's a little bit deficient. And then if we add the sites above it, then we can start to understand how this task system is calculating leverage. We can see the output of these algorithms for each individual landing page. We can see which landing pages Google prefers in each algorithm. And that allows us to put together these two things to produce a task list that allows us to go in and understand what things we need to do for that specific result. And of course, you can see, like as we are going in here, there's a in this model right here, we saw the site in the number 74th position, the 55th position, 38th position, and the first position. So it's basically added a few sites above. I won't get too deep into why it does this, but it's using example sites that all do well in certain areas of the search engine as a task by comparison feature in our task system. So not only do we, when we go into the task system, not only do we see like which algorithms are important and which things we're deficient in and the biggest lever to pull, but we also see an example, a reference implementation of what Google likes. So we can see, here's the version that Google likes. This is their assumption. This is what our assumptions were and how we are out of line with Google. So that's the first step. And you can see, if we go in here, we'll just load up this task system real quick. And you can see sort of what I'm talking about right here, where each task is designed to show you an example of what's happening here. So like for each one of these, we can see sort of the outperformer. So for this heading similarity algorithm happened to be very important in the search results. So the way that you structure your headings, and this happens to be a embedding text classifier. So it's doing embeddings on each of these heading tags. And you can see that there's the outperformer and their heading tags and the score. And then we can see the target page down here, way down here. That's a lot of heading tags. Wow. It's somewhere in here. Yeah, we get the target site here. We can see our target heading similarity score. So each one of these is sort of a task by comparison feature. And we can also see that there's a progress bar right here. Well, what does that mean? Well, if we don't recalibrate the model and we just change one thing on the model, maybe let's just change one thing on your target site and test that through the model by refreshing the model with just that target site change. We can track the progress of what you're doing and how your results are changing. What I mean by that is, here's the results for this model, right? So here's the Giovanni site and 3 sites included above it. And you can see next to each one of these sites, there is a query score breakdown. So this is all of the scores that went into the real-time scoring that produced the ordering of these results. So you can see sort of the query parser performance. There's a bunch of algorithmic performances down here, and these are all multipliers. So this essentially gives you the mixture. These have all been calibrated, so they're weighted a different way. And so each one of these contribute to a raw query score. And this gets converted to, in our system, 100% is the #1 position, and then everything is based off of that relative. So you can see that we're down here at the target page at 24%. And so as we start making changes to the model, right, or not to the model, but to the site, if the model's held constant, we can measure where that new position is for the target page. So if you noticed at the top here, the ranking blueprint, there's a thing called target URL improvement. And what that's essentially doing is it's measuring how far we've gone from 24% up to 100%. So as the team starts making changes, they get instant feedback on what's happening in the model. So Corey, when we're talking about, how do we know what's happening? This is the first step, right? So the first step is, as you make changes, the model changes, right? Now there's a cool thing on these task systems that allow us to go into this task simulator, right? Because now if we can do this, every time we change something on our site and see what the new model is, well, we could also simulate that as well. So we can simulate if we do this, if we do that. So here we can see that they can move up 46 points or 46 points, a 75% improvement in query score, which represents a climb from 74 all the way to 1. So we've literally laid out the blueprint to do this, and it's all based off of the actual model that it's operating on. So as we change things, let's say we don't do the first 4 items, right? I'm just spitballing here, Steve. But let's go ahead and take away the first 4 items, and there we go. So if we don't do these first 4 tasks, it doesn't matter what we do down here, right? Like all of these things down here, there could be a list of 100 things to do. But if we don't do these 4 right here, which are the things that we've measured as the highest leverage against the model, the highest they can do is the 38th position. And that means they've gained nothing. They might have spent months on doing all the other tasks that it was asked of them. And yet now they're the villain. They're not the hero, because in the end, the CFO, the CEO, they're all just looking at it like, okay, like what was the purpose of that, right? So that's really the goal of what this forecasting tool allows us to do. And when we attribute the actual value to this, obviously it's pretty clear to most of you at this point that we can literally see what the opportunity cost of not doing these things. And it's because we can refer back to a model, right? This model is changing in real time. So it's basically, showing this bump up at a certain rate. And then if we remove those specific tasks, then it can only get to a certain point in the system. So that's really what it means to essentially be forecasting from a perspective of data, right? It's based off an actual model. We can see the model change as we do these sliders.
Okay, so Scott, Samir has another question for you.
Sure.
I'll throw up in the chat, but before he does, I have a question that popped in my head too. In the SEO space, we always talk about the time that it takes to actually see changes happen. Inside the forecasting model, yes, we can get us to #1, but is there also a way that we can tell our executives above us or the people we report to that here's the estimated timeline it's going to take to actually get there as well?
Sure. So obviously, no matter how fast you move, you're still beholden to Google, right? Google still has to come around, recrawl the changes that we've already seen in the model. It's got to reindex everything, rescore everything. A lot of people think that Google just recalculates things very quickly because of the something called the caffeine algorithm update, which essentially bifurcated or split into two the updates to the search results, the visual updates, and the scoring system. So you'll often see changes reflected in the results very quickly for a trusted site, and then the rankings will change later on. So it does take about 45 to 90 days, somewhere in that pattern. It really depends on the search intent and the vertical that we're talking about. But it takes typically on average, let's call it 60 days, 2 months before we can see the updates on our on the search results. And of course, the rank trackers are usually pretty quick these days to pick up those results. So, count on about 60 days by the time we sort of lock in all the changes on our production system. Remember, in our search engine models, we can do these on our test and qualifying staging systems as well. So we can swap the test system into this production model, and there'll be some missing things like some of the link graph might be missing, but it allows us to figure out what positive or negative directional movement is going to happen if we make certain changes. So once these are in our production systems, then it takes about 60 days to sort of see the relationship between what the model predicted versus what actually happened. And then as you move forward, there's this nice linear relationship that we've found. So once you've seen the reaction and, Market Brew tells us this is what happened, the next step around is very similar, right? So if you see the next prediction, you almost know exactly within a very small margin of error what's about to happen 2 months later.
Perfect. Well, let's get to Samir's question. Samir, thanks for your patience. He said, does it provide inputs on creating content pillars and or other structures?
Yes, it does. So it depends on the algorithm. So we have a spotlight algorithm. Let me go ahead and pull this up here. It'll be a lot easier to show you. Just very quickly, the semantic arc, right? So this is the semantic arc that we've been on in search. So the text classifier that would be dealing with topic clustering and content pillars would be very similar to this entity algorithm. We call it the spotlight focus, and this does an entity extraction, disambiguation. It does all the relationships just like a structured knowledge graph would do, and it defines what the search engine thinks about the page from an entity-based text classifier perspective. And so in any of these tasks that get generated for that algorithm, what we'll often do is, besides just showing you an example of a site that did it very well, we'll also provide a large language model interpretation. So we will look at the two data sets, and then we'll let the large language model interpret what the thing to do to merge, right? So here's what they do, here's what we do. This is the realignment that we need to do. So that allows us to implement, I think, what you're looking for.
Okay, he's got one more. We're going to do one
keep
more.
them going.
Scott,
All right.
Here we go. So Samir says, how does it incorporate algorithm changes and future changes based upon past shifts?
Based upon past shifts. Okay. Well, so very quickly, what we can do is, let me put my screen back up. One of the things that we can do is recalibrate the model at any given time. So anytime there's a major Google algorithm update, and you'll know that this is occurring because we have this particle swarm optimization score. So it's watching these results, right? So we can see, this target page, it was 74th when it was calibrated. They're now number 36 on the ranking. So they've moved up quite a bit. And so you can see this, this is always measuring what the true target search engine ranking is versus what the model ranking is. And as we see a splitting of those two, and you'll always see this in your testing, right? Because it's a control group, and we're changing your target page, right? Or your target site. And so as we make changes, your target site's going to be moving up in the rankings, and it's not moved up in the rankings on the calibrated data set, right? So those two data sets will start to look different. And so as you make changes to the model, your PSO score will go down until you recalibrate the model. So you just come in here, click on recalibrate or recrawl all sites and calibrate model. And usually in under a day, you'll have a whole new model that basically shows you everything that you need to know about today's Google's bias, right? So you'll see before and after. And then of course, you can always go into the history of the ranking blueprint and see that historical trend, right? So you can see whatever algorithms that you want to care about. You can see what was the setting before, and then what is the setting now. So it really kind of gets rid of a lot of the fog of, what is Google doing actually? What have they changed in any particular time frame?
Great. Well, Scott, it appears that the questions have stopped. So either you answered them all perfectly, or our viewers may have more coming up later. But nonetheless, let's close out our time together just with a couple of questions. All of us in the SEO industry recognize that there is pain in the space, and there's pain in the space because we are constantly trying to be competitive, and there's a struggle to really justify why is the work that I'm doing matters. And I think for a lot of SEO directors and specialists who are on the call, who work in agencies or work with other businesses, really need to kind of have this, come to a crisis moment where we can say, hey, how do we actually see the path forward? You need clear projections. You need clear data to help convince leadership to invest more. And so here is our ask of our viewers. We think we're the tool for you. We think that Market Brew is the best tool in your tech stack in order for you to accomplish the change you're looking for. So here's my ask. Book a call with me. I'd love to sit down with you personally for 15 minutes, talk through your business, talk through your strategy, talk through what's going well or what's not going well, and see if we might be able to partner together. Because long term, Scott, what I love about, and I'll say this because Scott's become a quick friend, what I love about Scott is his humility, and I love his desire to be helpful. There are so many people in this space who want to flaunt what they know and gloat about who they are. And Scott doesn't do that. Off the screen, Scott's like, don't even talk about me, guys. But I'm like, I got to talk about you. But the reality is we love helping businesses. We love unlocking something that should be transparent, and the fact that it's not is a problem. So that's why Market Brew came around. So friends, we would love to spend some time with you. So feel free to go to marketbrew.ai on the banner, click on pricing, and then book a call with me. And if there's any way that we can be helpful, we would love to. So Scott, we finished our second fireside chat. Do you think we should have a third, or are we done? Is this it?
I think we're going to talk about link flow distribution next week, or
Okay.
the next in 2 weeks. We'll talk about one of the major issues that a lot of sites have of the way that their internal link graph is structured.
Okay.
This is one of the big things that people should know. So I think we will. Yes.
Awesome. Well, if you like us uncovering all the stones of SEO, we'll be sending out another email. We'll be sharing on our LinkedIn's and our X platform what we're up to, and would love to have you along for the journey. So again, Scott, thanks for the time, and signing off from Market Brew. We'll see you guys in a couple of weeks.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
All right, so get this. Today we're diving deep, really deep, into something called SEO forecasting. Have you heard of it?
It's like the best kept secret in digital marketing and one you need to know.
Yeah, I was going through the research you sent over, and it's pretty clear this SEO forecasting thing, it's a game changer, but nobody really talks about it.
Right. Which is crazy because imagine if you could actually see into the future of search trends.
Okay, yes, sign me up for that superpower. That'd be amazing.
Exactly. And that's what this boils down to, having the power to predict.
So no more flying blind. I'm ready to demystify this whole thing. What do we need to know?
Think about it like this, right? You're about to launch this big marketing campaign, put in all the work, but you have no idea what's coming up ahead.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster. You'd be lost at sea.
Totally. Yeah. SEO forecasting, that's your compass. It's like, okay, what's the weather report on my marketing strategy? It's about understanding what people are searching for, but not just today.
Tomorrow, the future.
Exactly.
So I'm not just keeping up with the competition, I'm one step ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the advantage here. You get to anticipate those trends and stay ahead of the curve, which in the digital world, that's everything.
It's everything, especially now. It changes so fast.
Constantly.
So where do we even start with this whole forecasting thing? I gotta be honest, some of the stuff you sent over got a little technical.
It can seem that way, but when you break it down, it's actually pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. If you're going on a road trip, you're not just going to hop in the car and just drive.
Yeah. No way. At least not me. I've got to have my route, look at traffic, and I'm booking those hotels in advance.
Exactly. So think of it like that. But instead of highways, you have keywords. and those are your map.
So instead of landmarks, I'm looking at what the words and phrases people are typing in.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do we know which words to focus on?
So forecasting keyword trends, it's about spotting the terms that are gaining popularity, the ones that can be huge later on.
So like investing in those hot new stocks.
Yes, you want to be there at the ground floor. And just like investors have all those fancy tools and charts, we've got ours.
Let me guess, Google Analytics.
Of course, it's a gold mine. The excerpts specifically mention it.
Oh yeah, it's a gold mine if you know how to read it, which luckily I think I'm getting better at. I mean, it's like having a team of little digital detectives tracking every single click.
Every click, every search term on your website.
So we're not just shooting in the dark, there's a method to the madness.
There's a method. Using data to make informed decisions.
Huh?
That's the key here. And the excerpts also mention something called statistical forecasting, which might sound a bit intimidating.
Please break it down for me.
Okay, imagine you're a detective. You're trying to solve a case. You wouldn't just focus on the last piece of evidence you found, right? You'd look at the whole timeline.
The bigger picture.
And that's what this is. You're analyzing all that past data to see if there are patterns and use those to predict what's going to happen next.
So like, for example, if I know that every year my website traffic dips in the summer.
You can anticipate that.
Right, and maybe shift my focus, try different things.
Right, maybe those are the months you focus on a different platform, or you start creating content that's geared towards the fall.
It's about riding those waves instead of getting crushed by them.
Exactly.
Okay, this is blowing my mind. So we've got keywords, we're looking at data, we're doing some detective work. What else? Don't we have to worry about what our competitors are doing?
Oh, absolutely. Competitive analysis is huge. That's like scouting out your rivals in a game.
Okay, I get it. So what am I looking for?
You want to see their strengths. What are they doing well? But also, what are their weaknesses? What are they not doing well? You can learn from both.
So I'm checking out their website, seeing what keywords they're using, what seems to be working for them.
Exactly. It's not about copying them, but taking inspiration, learning from what they're doing.
So I can carve out my own space.
Exactly.
Okay, this is all starting to make sense now. But how does this actually translate into, results? That's what I really want to know. How does this impact my bottom line?
It all comes down to making sure that your SEO efforts are as effective as possible.
Working smarter, not harder, right? Like the sound of that.
Right. So think of it like this. You're a gardener, right?
Right.
You spend all this time planting and watering and fertilizing. But if you don't know the right time to do all of those things,
You're not going to get those amazing results.
Exactly. And your website, that's your garden.
Okay, I like that. So SEO forecasting helps me become a better gardener. I can dig into that.
Exactly. It's about knowing when to plant those seeds so you can get the best bloom. And the excerpts had a really good example about this, talking about website traffic fluctuations. You've probably seen this yourself.
All the time. Sometimes it feels like I'm on a roller coaster. Up one day, down the next, and I have no idea why.
Right. So imagine you're looking at your data and you see this dip every summer in your traffic. And you dig a little deeper and you realize that your target audience, let's say it's people who love gardening.
Okay, I'm with you.
They're spending less time online during those months because they're outside actually gardening.
Makes sense. But instead of panicking about it, I can actually anticipate it and change my strategy during those months.
Exactly. You can adjust so you're not getting thrown off by those dips. You could even use those insights to create content that's like specific to those months.
Content that's really going to resonate with them.
Yes. Yes. And what's really exciting is that there are all these AI tools now that can help you with this.
Oh yeah, AI is everywhere you look these days. It's like the buzzword of the century.
Yeah.
But how does it actually work for SEO forecasting?
Well, the excerpts you sent over mentioned this platform called Market Brew.
Market Brew, right.
And they're all about using AI to basically make forecasting easier and faster.
Easier and faster. Those are two things I like. Because honestly, between you and me, sometimes this feels like a full-time job.
It can be, but that's their big selling point. They're claiming that they can deliver these really powerful insights 60 days faster.
60 days? Whoa. That's a pretty bold claim. I mean, in the digital world, 60 days, that's like dog years, right?
It's a lifetime ago, practically.
So how are they backing that up? What's the magic behind this Market Brew thing?
Well, they've got a couple of tricks up their sleeve. They talk about something called a semantic entity graph, which sounds really fancy.
Yeah, it sounds a little intimidating, if I'm being honest.
It is. I had to look it up myself. But basically, think of it like this. It's not just about analyzing the words that people are searching for.
Which we already said is super important.
Right. But it's also about understanding why they're searching for them, the intention behind the search.
Okay, so like someone could be searching for running shoes for a lot of different reasons.
Exactly. Maybe they need new shoes for work. Maybe they're training for a marathon. Maybe they just want to look cool.
So how do we figure out what they really want?
That's where Market Brew comes in. They try to map out the relationships between different words and concepts so they can create this like deeper understanding of your audience.
So it's like they're reading between the lines of the search results.
Exactly. They're trying to understand the context, the meaning behind the words.
That's pretty impressive. I've got to admit, it sounds like Market Brew is taking things to a whole new level with this.
It's definitely interesting. But like any tool, it all comes down to how you use it.
You've got to know what to do with that information. So, okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about keywords. We talked about analyzing data. We've got AI tools now, competitive analysis. What's the next step? Where do we go from here?
Right, because what's the point of all this if it doesn't actually help me get better results?
Exactly. And it's not about replacing the hard work. You still got to put that in. No shortcuts.
No shortcuts, but it's about working smarter, not harder, right? Having a game plan.
I like the sound of that. Tell me more.
So remember that gardener analogy from earlier?
Yeah, about knowing when to plant your seeds for the best results.
Exactly. So SEO forecasting, that's your game plan. It helps you understand the best times to do certain things for maximum impact. And speaking of impact, the excerpts mentioned creating an SEO forecasting checklist, which I think is a great place to start.
Okay, so like a to-do list for my SEO.
Exactly, a roadmap for success. And you can customize it as you learn more, but starting with the basics, like are you tracking your analytics? What keywords are you targeting? Have you checked out those AI tools we were talking about?
Okay, so manageable steps. I can get behind that. But this all still feels a little overwhelming, if I'm being honest. Where do I even start?
Well, you've already started. You're thinking about the future of your online presence. You're asking the right questions.
That's true. I guess I have come a long way. So, to wrap things up, it sounds like SEO forecasting, it's not really about predicting the future. It's more about using data to make smarter decisions.
Exactly.
And by understanding things like keywords and competition and using some of these amazing tools, I can create a better experience for my audience and hopefully see some amazing growth.
Absolutely. And don't forget, SEO is constantly changing, so staying flexible is key.
So true. This has been incredible. I feel like I've learned so much. A huge thank you to you for breaking it all down. And for our listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of SEO forecasting. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got some forecasting to do.